Well, I think over the course of the last year, with all the volatility at the end of 2008 and moving into 2009 where that's really continued, what you've seen is people just, they realize they can't do it anymore. The budget plans they put together in the fall were falling and crumbling away literally as they were being created. In the survey research that we did with Business Finance last year, that we looked and asked that very question: at what point during the year does your budget become obsolete? And we started with, full year it works, 99 months, 6 months, and so forth. What we found is 20% of the people said by January 1st, on the first day of the year, the budget was obsolete. By 6 months in the year, 2/3 of them said it's totally worthless. In that kind of situation, when you realize it doesn't help you manage your business, then you got to say, hey, wait a minute. Why am I spending so much time and so much effort negotiating something that's worthless from the day one when I started? When we looked at the budget to variance explanations that people do, which is a dumb thing. I have a feature on the blog about dumb stuff finance should stop doing. That's number one on my list. Budget to actual variance explanation, because what typically happens is when 3 to 6 months into the year in the budget, the assumptions we made last summer are totally out the window. Finance basically says actual is different than budget because we made mistakes in the assumptions from last year's budgets. The next month, you get virtually the same thing. It's still wrong because finance made its mistakes in last year's budget. Third time, operations says, why can't you finance guys get it right? And the answer is you've got to change the process. The budget to variance explanation doesn't help you manage the business. It's looking back to assumptions you made in the summer and trying to talk about that. Instead, people are moving to actual versus rolling forecast. What am I doing versus what I thought I'm going to do? And when they roll the forecast every year, it's what's the new forecast compared to the old forecast. So I get a question of where do I think I'm going versus where I thought I was going to go. And we find those are much more effective, proactive ways to manage the business. Two other key things. One, last year when they got into this trouble and they had to throw the budget out finally, so many companies I've talked to basically had to just quit any kind of comparison because it was so far out the window. Well, they went through a year and they didn't have time to do another plan, so in many cases they ran without a budget for 6 months or 9 months or a full year. And what they found is, hey, the wheels didn't fall off. We can do this. We can manage on a relative basis. We can manage going forward. The analogy we use in our upcoming book on Future Ready about rolling forecasts is that business is really much like a ship. It's not like an annual plan where I start at the beginning of the year and basically get to rethink all my decisions. What happens is organizations have a cost structure. And in that cost structure, that's based on thousands of decisions that you've already made. And it's like a big ocean liner out on the ocean moving forward. You can make decisions that really begin to change your direction, change your speed, but it's like 1,000 little rudders as they move forward in terms of what's out there. And over time, it will change direction. Now, you can take on acquisitions, you can jettison things and cut them off and sell parts of the business, but it's like this big ship moving forward. And if that's how our organizations work in this cost structure that streams, then do we move and manage the same way? And what we do when we move to a rolling forecast and move forward with those things, we have an ability at that point to say, okay, we're really about steering a ship. And we can focus on the competition, we can focus on the environment. It's about how we steer as we go forward. That question about, I've got to have a budget because my incentives are tied to that is one I get very often, and it tends to be the biggest block people see. If I don't have a budget, how do I pay people? And people are under the delusion that that is a pay for performance. In that situation, it's not pay for performance, it's pay for negotiated results. When you tie your incentive comp to reaching an annual budget and you allow your people to negotiate what that budget should be, you get to what Jack Welch calls a invigorating exercise in minimalization. Everybody's focus is on lowering that budget number because then that way they maximize their payout. So everything about the business, all the planning, all the direction, is not about optimizing and driving shareholder value. It's about moving down and sub-optimizing results and getting that low target. And boy, the minute I hit that low target, I don't want to do any more. So it's all about sub-optimization. We've got to break free from that and move to paying people for delivering actual results. So in beyond budgeting, our recommendation is to move away from these fixed targets that are negotiated into relative targets. And so we'll replace that incentive compensation plan with one that focuses on what is the real value created. And if I focus on value creation using a value like economic value added or similar value-based measure that really reflects your stock price, really reflects your long-term growth, then I can pay people for what they actually deliver. Once I've separated those two things, I've freed up the organization to really move forward. In forecasting, a lot of people have the delusion that forecasts are a chance to renegotiate budget targets. They're not. Forecasts are a way to say, where am I trying to go? If I pay based on what I actually deliver, I don't pay you based on your forecast, I pay you based on what you actually deliver. So in your forecast, tell me where you think you're going to go. You're going to get paid on where you actually take us. And we get a much more concrete and true form of payment because we've taken all that negotiation out of the situation.